Over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to add in combat into my game Hexagod, and I've been having a really hard time because fundamentally speaking, one of my design pillars, one of the core aspects of Hexagod for me has been trying to make a clean UI and UX, which means my systems have to be just complex enough that they're fun and interesting, but also not so complex that it makes the UI UX of the game impossible to do in a clean and minimalistic fashion. On top of all of that, I've managed somehow to make an incredibly fun demo that time and time again feedback has been, I just want more of this game, which is some of the best feedback to be getting. So I have a fun game. So how do I then add in combat into the game and not do it in a way that ruins the UI UX and maintains the fun success that the demo is already demonstrating? And that has been especially challenging with this combat system here. You might be thinking, well, Aarimous, if it's so hard to add to the game, maybe that's a sign that combat shouldn't be added into the game. But one of my secrets is that I've gotten a lot of feedback. So I'm using my demo over on my Steam page to actually garner feedback of what the full game should be. I've watched anybody who will possibly send me a video or have my friends stream it over on Discord. And that's been the big secret to the success of this game so far, has been watching people play it, figuring out what the stumbling blocks are so I can fix that UI UX. And I've identified that although the core systems of playing cards, placing hexagon tiles, managing your villagers, managing resources, and kind of interacting with the old evil hex system to make sure that your village doesn't kind of spiral out of control negatively, although those things are fun and they're good, there's kind of a big piece of the fun pie chart missing, and I think that is the tension of losing the game. Currently, the way you lose the game is if all your villagers die. At the end of the day, you have to feed a villager 2 food, and they have to have 1 housing to live. So you really quickly learn, okay, I need housing in order to keep my villagers alive, and then you learn that at a bare minimum every day you need enough food for them to live. The way the balancing of the game works out, eventually once you get to 2 or 3 villagers, you can kind of solve food and get yourself to 5 or 6 days of food. So then the game becomes, how do I finish the game? And the fear of losing the game isn't going to be that high. My goal was for the evil hex system to be a wrench in that process where if you didn't deal with the evil hex systems, they would steal your food or kill your villagers or spawn negative tiles that would make your adjacency bonuses and stuff like that kind of bad and kind of make your villager spiral out of control. But it doesn't really do that. It kind of becomes something a little bit ignorable, and I needed a second tension of how to lose the game. So I needed another way to kill the villagers, and that is where I'm hoping combat can be that second tension. Because when you go into combat, you're going to be an adjacent tile and they're going to be dealing damage to you. You're going to be dealing damage to it. So now, because I've engaged in combat, I'm not collecting resources. So you have to figure out moments where you have enough food to be able to enter into combat. You're managing now resource gathering versus the tension of combat. I need to make the evil hexes something that if you don't deal with them, they're going to become a problem. So you can see this evil hex here right now. Every 120 seconds, it's going to spawn a tundra tile next to you. Tundra tiles are basically trash tiles that can't do anything for you. And then they're going to start summoning demons. My goal with the demons then is that the demons will wander around your village and essentially become an existential threat that you have to balance and manage. And here is the secondary reason I think combat is going to be really cool. Through watching my friends play, I would realize that once they get a second villager, the first villager might just sit on the shrine, endlessly gathering you favor. And that's kind of a fun thing to roleplay and say, you're the priest of the village. But that, in my head, bing, light bulb moment, I could make that into a mechanical thing. I could give you a way to specialize your villagers, and that's going to be through an item system. So in combat, how do you then make more and more combat more interesting? Well, I could have cards in here that don't just play resources, but they could give your villagers specific things. Think of like a sword that instead of dealing 1 to 4 damage when they attack, now they deal 3 to 6 damage. All of a sudden now I have a way to specialize a warrior versus maybe a shrine. Maybe the shrine villager, you give them an amulet and it says you gather +1 favor from shrines, or you gather it faster or something like that. So now you've specialized a priest villager versus a warrior villager. And I think that sort of balancing is going to be a really interesting thing that's going to give you ability to customize your villagers, maybe also giving you the ability to name them or change their hairstyle, and then specialize them in something you want to do. So now if you say a evil hex has spawned, you can say, okay, cool. What do I want to do? Oh, I need an extra villager to go into combat here. So I'm going to place another tile next to it. I'm going to put this one into combat. That one's going to move into combat. It's going to be slotted into this tile. And I'm going to move this one into combat as well. And now we've opened up 2 slots of combat versus this one. But maybe this villager started as a farmer. And eventually you say, screw it. I'm going to make you drop your farming tool that's making you collect food faster. And instead here, take the sword and go to combat. I love that story. And if I can mechanically create a situation in the game where there is a secondary tension where you might actually lose this villager, and instead you have to then go in and grab your farming villager and say, hey, I know you're a farmer, but it's time to go to war. Basically switching your production economy into a war economy and a battle economy is a really interesting story, a really interesting balancing act, and it's something that I could see scaling into the mid and late games for me. So hopefully I can figure out how to balance this all correctly, because adding in combat is going to make balancing kind of a nightmare, but I know getting feedback from players is going to be the core fundamental way that I can balance this game. The other major thing that this is actually going to do for me is give me a win condition for the game. Previously, the current way you win the demo is by having 3 alive villagers and 100 victory points. That's just a way to end the demo before it kind of gets too grindy and run out of control. And I thought about maybe just having like 6,000 victory points by the way you win the game, but that doesn't have a climactic ending. That just feels like an ending to have an ending. So why put it in there to begin with? But combat now gives me a good reason. Like I said, switching the production economy into a war economy, you could also then switch at the end of the game, start taking all of your villagers who are doing production-focused things, who are specialized in wood gathering and stone gathering, in science or in favor, and eventually start switching them over and destroying their tools and giving them really high-value equipment, so that you've collected maybe a ton of wood and a ton of metal and a ton of science, and you're equipping them with those really good swords so you can go and beat the Hexademon, the thing that spawns after a couple months or 100 days or whatever the time frame ends up being, or maybe there's a ritual to spawn it, and you can then go and have all of your villagers you've gathered over the course of the whole game. They have to go and defeat the thing. You get this climactic victory. Maybe 3 or 4 of your villagers died through that process, and you can finally then kill it at the cost of those villagers. But you have this climactic moment. Dun 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 dun! Ta-da! You win. Victory screen. Pan. Roll credits, shows Aarimous was the only creator. You say, holy crap, this game was made by one person. That's insane. I'm going to go leave a positive review on the game. That's the story I tell myself. I'm hoping, again, that combat can really solve kind of that secondary tension in the game. If you're interested, leave some comments below with questions or ideas when I talked about combat, how this could be functioning. Again, this should be live later today. If you want to go check out the demo over on Steam, consider wishlisting it. Even if this isn't your type of game and you want to support me, wishlisting does help the Steam algorithm, allegedly, show it to more people. I've been Aarimous. This shit's hard. I'm not perfect at it. I'm making it up as I go. I'm learning. I'm constantly making mistakes. You're better at this than you think you are. I've been Aarimous. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.